Hi class. In this video we're going to look at a couple examples from chapter 4. So the first one we're going to look at is very much like P4-20 in your homework. Same basic problem, just different amounts that we're going to use. So I've got our information up here at the top. It says Savalas Company is highly automated and uses computers to control manufacturing operations. The company uses a job order costing system and applies manufacturing overhead costs to product on the basis of computer hours. So computer hours is their cost driver. We're given some estimates at the beginning of the year. That's important. Then it says during the year a severe economic recession resulted in cutting back production and buildup of inventory in the company's warehouse. Company's cost records revealed the following actual costs and operating data for the year. So then we have a second set of data. So we have some things we need to calculate. Requirement 1 says compute the company's predetermined overhead rate for the year. So to do that, we're going to use the estimated information because this is a rate that we're calculating at the beginning of the year. So we don't have actual data. We only have estimated data. So we're going to chart 1 up here to find our estimated data. And the first thing we need to do is calculate our total estimated overhead. And that's going to consist of both fixed overhead and variable overhead. So up here in our chart, we actually have an amount given for fixed overhead. So we don't have to calculate that at all. We're just going to bring that amount down. So it's $1,278,000. The next thing we need to know is our variable manufacturing overhead that's estimated. We go up here to our chart. They don't give us an amount for total variable overhead. They're giving us an amount per computer hour of variable manufacturing overhead. So we know how much they think it costs in overhead every time they use a computer for an hour. We also have an estimated number of computer hours that we think we're going to use through the year. So we can take this $80,000, multiply it by the rate per hour, and come up with our total estimated variable manufacturing overhead. So I'm going to do this down here in the box. It's going to be 80,000 hours times $3.50 an hour. It's 280,000 hours. And over here in the yellow, I have indicated that's my formula that I use, just so we have it. We need to look back at it. So now that I've calculated my estimated variable manufacturing overhead, and I knew my fixed overhead, or estimated fixed overhead, I can get the total estimated manufacturing overhead, which is $1,558,000. Then, using that information, I can calculate a predetermined overhead rate. So the predetermined overhead rate is just the rate that we're going to cost out our overhead every time we use an hour of those computers. So it's an estimate, so we can allocate our overhead throughout the year, just to kind of keep our records up to date. So to calculate a predetermined overhead rate, we're going to take our total overhead and we're going to allocate it by computer hours. So we're going to divide it by the total number of computer hours we're estimating that are going to be used during the year. So if we go back up here in our instructions, again it was 80,000 computer hours we're estimating that we're going to use. So we can take our estimated total manufacturing overhead, which is $1,558,000, divide it by the 80,000 hours we believe we're going to use the computers, and that gives us a per computer hour amount that we're going to allocate overhead of $19.48. So this is actually the answer to requirement 1. Requirement 2 says compute the underapplied or overapplied overhead for the year. So to do that, we need to know, well, how much did we actually have in overhead, and how much did we apply in overhead? So our actual amounts are in the second chart, right there. And let's see. Manufacturing overhead cost. They give us total manufacturing overhead cost, and it's $1,042,000. So we're going to put that in here. Manufacturing overhead cost applied to work in process during the year. So, and I've told you kind of how to do that. So we're going to multiply the actual computer hours that we use by the predetermined overhead rate, this here, that we calculated in part 1. Now the reason for that is that throughout the year, every time we use a computer hour, we said we're going to allocate $19.48 of overhead to that, in addition to the other costs, the direct labor and direct materials. We're also going to allocate $19.48 every time we use an hour of computers. So all through the year, every time we use an hour of the computers, we added $19.48 into that overhead that we've allocated. So if we did that all year long, we would have allocated $19.48 50,000 times, because we used 50,000 computer hours. So what we would have allocated would be 50,000 computer hours times $19.48 for every hour. So that was off a little bit. Let's see. Equals 50,000. Must be around there. Hold on, let me just type that in. There we go. $974,000. So a little bit of a rounding difference because I was trying to use a formula. So then we have an amount that's either over applied or under applied. So we have to figure out, well, what is it? So if we had actual manufacturing costs of $1,042,000 and we only allocated $974,000 of those costs, we're left with $68,000 that hasn't been allocated yet, but we actually paid for. So because what we applied is less than what we actually incurred, we have underapplied overhead. Right, now requirement 3 says determine the cost of goods sold for the year after adjustments for overapplied or underapplied overhead. So we have an unadjusted cost of goods sold. And that comes from up here from those actual amounts. So we've got a cost of goods sold right here, $2,750,000. Oops. And we've got either our underapplied or our overapplied overhead. So that was $68,000. And that was actually underapplied. So if we have a cost of goods sold and we actually had underapplied overhead, what's going to happen is we're going to have to actually go in and charge cost of goods sold an additional $68,000 because we didn't charge or apply enough overhead during the year. So we're going to have to go back and apply those $68,000 that's kind of left over at the end of the year. So we're going to increase our cost of goods sold because we're going to actually apply that $68,000. So for underapplied overhead, you're going to add that to your unadjusted cost of goods sold to get your adjusted cost of goods sold. Now, if we had overapplied overhead, we're going to do the opposite. We would have subtracted that $68,000 because we would adjust our cost of goods sold down because there would be too much overhead in that cost of goods sold, so we need to back some of it out. So add if you've underapplied, subtract if you've overapplied. So that's all there is to P4-20. So looking at P4-21, again, a similar problem to your homework, although it's not exact. It says wood grain technologies make, whoops, I can get back up here. Wood grain technology makes home office furniture from fine hardwoods. They use a job order costing system and predetermined overhead rates to apply manufacturing overhead cost to each job. The predetermined overhead rate in the preparation department is based on machine hours, so that's our cost driver for the preparation department. The rate in the fabrication department is based on direct labor hours, so that's the cost driver for fabrication. At the beginning of the year, we have some following estimates, so all of this is estimated amounts at the beginning of the year. And then we have some actual amounts that we've charged out to Job 127. So first of all, just let me note that we have a company with different predetermined overhead rates in different departments, and that's perfectly fine. And they're using different cost drivers in each department because that's what makes sense to them. So your cost driver could be based on anything that's logical that makes sense depending on your business. In their business, they're using machine hours in the preparation department, so most likely the preparation department is very machine hour intense. That's really the primary cost of the process in the preparation department. So they're tying the overhead to those machine hours because that's just what's logical. In the fabrication department, my guess is it's a very labor intense department, so they're tying their overhead cost to that labor cost because that's the primary cost driver in that department. So now that we've noted that, let's come down here, and requirement 1 says compute the predetermined overhead rate used during the year in the preparation department and in the fabrication department. So we have two different departments we're going to have to do these calculations for. So I've kind of laid out a template to help us along. So first we're going to work in the preparation department. We're going to calculate the total manufacturing overhead so that we can calculate that predetermined overhead rate that we are going to use. So to do that, we're going to have to find our estimated fixed cost. It's going to go up here to our estimated amounts. There is a line that says fixed manufacturing overhead cost, and for preparation it's $199,200. Then we're going to have to estimate our variable manufacturing overhead. So back up here to our chart, it says variable manufacturing overhead. It's got two amounts, one per machine hour, one per direct labor hour. Those are down here. And we've got machine hours and direct labor hours up here. So for preparation, the instructions said they allocate or apply their variable or their manufacturing overhead based on machine hours in the preparation department. So we're going to use this 83,000 machine hours and the $3 per machine hour to calculate our variable manufacturing overhead. So that's going to be $3 times $83,000. $249,000 is our total estimated manufacturing overhead in the preparation department. And this yellow is just the formula that I used, came from the data above. So after we get the total manufacturing overhead, then we can calculate the predetermined overhead rate. Oops, and I've cut it in there already, so let's take that out and work into it. Excuse me. So here's your instructions. You're going to divide your total estimated manufacturing overhead by the estimated number of machine hours, because that's our cost driver. So here we have total estimated overhead divided by our estimated machine hours, which was 83,000 machine hours. So it's $5.40 per machine hour in overhead. That's the amount we're going to allocate. Fabrication department, same process. So we're going to get our estimated fixed manufacturing overhead from our chart above. And it's right here, $438,480. And then we have to calculate our total estimated variable manufacturing overhead. So to do that, we need to know the amount per hour and the number of hours. So back up here, we've got $5 per direct labor hour in variable overhead. And in the fabrication department, we're using direct labor hours as our cost driver, so we're going to use that 31,000 hours as our amount down here. Oops, did I do that right? Oh, sorry, 50,400 hours is our labor. So we're going to take the $5 an hour times the 50,400 hours, gives us our total estimated variable manufacturing overhead, which gives us a total overhead, both fixed and variable, of $690,480. And then here is the formula that I used to calculate that variable. All right, then we're going to do our predetermined overhead rate. Again, I've got some instructions here. We are going to take the total manufacturing overhead, which is $690,480. We're going to divide it by the number of hours in our cost driver, which is 50,400 hours. Gives us a predetermined overhead rate of $13.70 per hour in the fabrication department. So requirement 2 says compute the total overhead cost applied to job 127. So if we look at job 127 up here, we've got some costs for the preparation department and some costs for the fabrication department. So if we're calculating the amount of overhead applied to this job, we're going to take the number of machine hours and apply that amount in the preparation department. We're going to take the number of direct labor hours and apply our overhead for fabrication. So our machine hours was 350 machine hours. Fabrication was 135 direct labor hours. So you'll see down here we've got 350 machine hours and 135 direct labor hours, and that's what I'm using in my calculation. I'm going to use those predetermined rates that I just calculated because that's a per hour amount. So here's my $5.40 we calculated up here for predetermined overhead for preparation, and then my $13.70 here was for fabrication. So if I do the math on that, I'm going to get 350 hours times $5.40 for preparation and 135 direct labor hours times $13.70 for fabrication, which gives us total overhead costs allocated to job 127 of $3,740. And then in the yellow, that's just my calculations, just FYI. Requirement 3A says, what would the total cost be for job 127? So of total cost for job 127, we have direct labor, direct materials, and manufacturing overhead, those three categories, and we'll have each of those three categories in the preparation department and in the fabrication department. So if we scroll back up here, we've got some direct material costs for each category, preparation and fabrication, and some direct labor costs in each of those. So we're going to take these bottom two for preparation and the bottom two for fabrication, and we're just going to carry those down to the little chart that I've built. So for preparation, direct materials was $932, direct labor was $740, and for fabrication, $1,220 and $950 for direct labor. So no calculations involved there. Our manufacturing overhead, we actually have to do calculations, but thankfully we've already done those. We did those in requirement 2. So we're just going to take these amounts from requirement 2 and carry them down to requirement 3. So preparation overhead was $1,890. And our fabrication overhead up here was $1,850. So after we fill in those amounts, and I've got some formulas in here, so mine totaled, the actual answer to the question for total cost would be $7,582 was the total cost for job 127, and that's this bottom corner amount. Requirement 3B says if the job contained 36 units, what would the per unit cost be? Well, we're going to take the total cost, divide it by 36 units, and that'll tell us how much each unit costs. So $7,582 in total cost divided by 36 units gives us $210.61 per unit. Again, the yellow is just my formula, my calculations that I used. And speeding right through here, requirement 4 says at the end of the year, the records revealed the following actual costs and operating data for all jobs worked on during the year. Let me see if I can fix that data. Misspelled word. All right, so we have some actual data here, and the question that we were asked is what is the amount of over-applied or under-applied overhead in each department at the end of the year. So we've done this process in P4-20. We're doing the same thing here, we're just doing it twice, once for preparation, once for fabrication. So we're going to start with what we incurred, or our actual cost, and we're going to look at, well, what did we apply, and then we're going to have to figure out whether it's over or under applied. So we're going to look at our chart to find our actual cost, and we have a line here that says manufacturing overhead cost, and there's an amount in each department. That's the amount incurred. So for preparation, it's $456,200, and for fabrication, it is $716,800. So that's the amount we actually paid in overhead cost. The amount we applied depends on how many hours we used, in our cost driver. Remember, there's two cost drivers: machine hours for preparation, direct labor hours for fabrication, and we would have allocated each of those hours out at our predetermined rate. So for manufacturing overhead, for preparation, we're going to take our machine hours, 82,500 machine hours were actually used, and we're going to multiply that by the predetermined rate, which is all the way up here. This is the one for preparation. It was $5.40. So we're going to multiply that $5.40. Because it's $445,500 we actually allocated. What that's telling us is that here, every time we used a machine hour, we charged the company, essentially, we charged out $5.40 of overhead. So, or we allocated $5.40 overhead. So every time we used a machine hour, we said we're going to allocate $5.40. We did that 82,500 times at $540 an hour, which gives us the total overhead that we applied. So fabrication, we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to use direct labor hours. So that one's going to be 55,000 direct labor hours times our predetermined rate, which is all the way up here. There it is, $13.70. And that's actually the amount that we applied. So every time we use a direct labor hour in fabrication department, which was 55,000 times, we said it cost us $13.70 overhead for this hour. So we did that. We just kept accumulating that $13.70 every time we used a direct labor hour. And we applied those at the predetermined rate. So that's the amount we applied. So then we have to look at, well, was it over applied or under applied? So I took the difference in both of these numbers, and you'll notice one's a positive and one is a negative. So that should tell you right off, well, one's over applied, one's under applied. So let's think through this. In the preparation department, we have actual overhead cost. We paid $456,200. We applied or costed out or allocated, all that means the same thing, $445,500. So we actually applied less than what it actually cost us. So because we applied less, we need to go back and apply another $10,700 in overhead to get this number up to equal actually what our costs were. So this one was under applied because we're going to have to go back and actually apply some more. We didn't quite apply enough. In the fabrication department, our actual overhead costs were $716,800. Our overhead costs that we applied were $753,500. So we actually applied more than it cost us in actuality. So we applied too much. So this one is over applied. So what would happen would be that we would have to go back and adjust our cost of goods sold down for fabrication because we costed too much overhead in that. So we have to bring that down. We would do the opposite in the preparation department. We would pull our cost of goods sold or adjust our cost of goods sold up because we didn't cost out enough. So we're going to have to cost out an additional $10,700. So that's all there is to this one. Hopefully this helps. Feel free to use the template. Your numbers are going to be different, so make sure when you do the calculations, depending on if something's over or under applied in some of these cases, you might have to change a little bit around or tweak the template. But in general, this should be something you can work with. Have a great week, and let me know if you have questions.